Eliza's father counted the money twice before he looked at her. 18 years I fed you, he said, folding the bills into his shirt. That's paid now. The stranger beside him, tall, weathered, silent, didn't smile, didn't speak. Just gestured toward the wagon with one rough hand. Get in, her father said. Not to the stranger. To her, like she was livestock, like she was grain. The stranger finally spoke, his voice flat as Kansas dirt. You work 3 years, then you're free to go. Eliza's hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't break. She looked at the money in her father's pocket, then at the man who'd bought her. Free, she said. Right. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Stay with me until the very end. This journey goes places you won't expect. And comment below with what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Eliza's story travels. Part 1. The wagon didn't have springs. Every rut in the road went straight through the wooden seat into Eliza's spine, but she didn't complain. Didn't ask where they were going. Didn't look back at the farmhouse getting smaller behind them. Her father hadn't even waited until they were out of sight before going inside. The stranger drove in silence. His hat brim shadowed most of his face, but she could see the line of his jaw set hard, like he was chewing on something bitter. His hands on the reins were scarred, calloused, the kind of hands that had broken things, and built things, and probably broken things again. After an hour, he spoke. Name's Caleb Voss. She waited, but that was all he offered. Eliza Rowan, she said. He nodded once, didn't look at her. Another mile passed. The sun dropped lower, turning the plains gold, then orange, then the color of a bruise. You got questions, he said, not asking, stating. Plenty. Ask. She studied his profile. Why'd you buy a person? His jaw tightened. Didn't buy a person. Bought your father's debt. Same thing. Not to me. Then what am I to you? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, someone who needs work. Someone who'll work hard for 3 years and then leave. And if I don't work hard, then you'll work longer. And if I run. Now he did look at her. His eyes were gray cold as a January sky. Then you'll owe me more than 3 years. You'll owe me the money I paid, plus what it cost to find you. So I'm trapped. You're bound. There's a difference. Explain it. Trapped means no way out. Bound means there's a door, you just gotta earn the key. She laughed. It came out sharp, humorless. Pretty words for the same cage. He turned back to the road. Believe what you want. They rode in silence after that. The landscape changed from farmland to open prairie, from prairie to rolling hills, from hills to something wilder, land that looked like it had never been tamed, only temporarily ignored. When the ranch came into view, it wasn't what she expected. No grand house, no painted fences, just a low cabin, a barn that leaned slightly east, and a corral that had seen better decades. This is it, she asked. This is it. He pulled the wagon to a stop, climbed down, didn't offer to help her. She jumped down on her own, her boots hitting packed dirt that was hard as stone. The front door of the cabin hung crooked on its hinges. Caleb walked past it without seeming to notice, heading for the barn. You'll sleep in the house, he called back. I sleep in the barn. She followed him. Why? Because the house is for living. Barns for animals and men who don't know the difference anymore. He pulled open the barn door. Inside it was neat, surprisingly so. Tools hung on pegs, saddles oiled, and organized hay stacked with military precision. A bedroll in the corner, a lantern on a barrel. You live like this? She asked. For 2 years now. What happened 2 years ago? His back went rigid. Nothing that concerns you. He walked past her back toward the cabin and pushed the door open with more force than necessary. It swung wide, revealing a single room table, stove, 2 chairs, a narrow bed against the far wall. Dust covered everything. The air smelled stale. "Clean it," he said. "Make it livable. That's your first job." "And then?" "Well, then you cook. Then you mend. Then you help with the ranch work. That's 3 jobs. You got 3 years." She walked inside, ran a finger along the table. The dust was thick enough to write in. "When did someone last live here?" 2 years ago." "Let me guess. None of my concern." He almost smiled. "Almost. Fast learner." "What if I refuse, Tom?" "Then you sleep in the dust." "What if I refuse all of it? The cleaning, the cooking, everything?" Now he did smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Then you find out if you're stubborn enough to outlast me. Most people aren't." He left her there, walked back to the barn, and didn't come out again that night. Eliza stood in the middle of the cabin looking at the bed, the stove, the thick layers of neglect. She could cry. She could scream. She could run into the darkness and take her chances with coyotes and cold. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves. By the time the sun rose, the cabin was transformed. Not beautiful. She didn't have supplies for beautiful, but functional. Clean. The table scrubbed the floor, swept the bed linens beaten outside until they stopped releasing clouds of dust. She'd found rags, water soap. She'd worked through the night, partly because she needed to prove something, partly because she was too angry to sleep. When Caleb emerged from the barn at dawn, he stopped in the doorway of the cabin, said nothing, just looked, then nodded once and walked to the well to draw water. Eliza waited for praise. Thanks. Some acknowledgement. None came. She found him by the corral an hour later, mending a section of fence. "I cleaned the cabin," she said. "I saw." "That's all you saw." He didn't look up from his work. "What do you want a medal? How about good job or thank you? You did what you were told, that's the deal." "The deal is, I work off a debt I didn't make." Now he looked at her. "Your father made it. You're paying it. That's how debt works. That's how injustice works. Call it what you want. Doesn't change the fence that needs mending or the roof that needs patching or the 100 other things that'll kill this place if they don't get done." She grabbed a hammer from the toolbox at his feet. "Then teach me." He blinked. "What? You want me to work? Teach me to work. Show me how to mend a fence, patch a roof, whatever else needs doing. Because I don't know how, and if you expect me to figure it out on my own, you'll be disappointed." He studied her for a long moment, then handed her a pair of leather gloves. "Put these on. Your hands are soft." "They won't be for long." "No," he agreed. "They won't." He taught her about fence posts that day. How to dig the hole deep enough, set the post straight, pack the dirt tight. He didn't waste words, didn't repeat himself, showed her once, expected her to remember. She did. By noon her hands were blistered despite the gloves. Her back ached. Sweat stuck her shirt to her skin. "You can stop," he said. "I didn't ask to stop." "I'm telling you to stop. You'll hurt yourself." "I'm already hurt. Might as well finish." Something shifted in his expression, so brief she almost missed it. Respect, maybe, or surprise. "We'll finish tomorrow," he said. "Today, you've done enough." They walked back to the cabin. She'd expected him to leave, return to his barn. Instead, he lingered by the door. "There's salt pork in the cellar," he said. "Beans, some flour. You know how to cook." "I know how to not starve." Good enough. That night, she made a meal. Simple beans, salt pork, cornbread. She set 2 plates on the table, 2 cups of water. When Caleb came in, he stared at the second plate. "What's this?" he asked. "Dinner." "I eat in the barn." "Not tonight, you don't. I cooked for 2. You're one of the 2. I don't." "Sit down, Caleb Voss, or the food gets cold and we both waste a meal." He sat. They ate in silence. She watched him from the corner of her eye. He ate methodically, cleanly, like someone who'd learned not to waste anything. When he finished, he stood, carried his plate to the basin, washed it himself. "It was good," he said. "It was beans. Still good." He left then, back to his barn, and she was alone again. But something had changed. Some invisible line had been crossed. The days developed a rhythm after that. Wake before dawn. Work until exhaustion. Eat. Sleep. Repeat. Eliza learned the ranch's secrets slowly. The well that ran shallow in August. The north pasture where wolves liked to hunt. The leak in the barn roof that Caleb patched every spring and ignored every winter. She learned his secrets too, though he didn't share them willingly. The way he avoided the bedroom, the one she slept in now. How he never went inside except to check if she needed something. The locked trunk in the corner of the barn. The way his hands shook sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. The nightmares that made him wake gasping, though he tried to hide it. One night, 3 weeks in, she heard him cry out. A raw sound animal and desperate. She got out of bed, pulled a shawl around her shoulders, walked to the barn, found him sitting on the ground back against a post, breathing hard. "Go back inside," he said. "No." "Eliza, what happened to you?" "Nothing." "Liar." He laughed. It sounded broken. "You don't pull punches, do you?" "I was sold by my father. Pulling punches seems pointless." He was quiet. Then, "I had a wife, a daughter." Had. Past tense. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "Fever. 2 years ago. Both of them in the same week." Eliza's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back." "No. But maybe it means you're not as alone as you think." He looked at her then. Really looked. "Why do you care?" "I don't know. Maybe because you're the only person in my life who didn't sell me, beat me, or ignore me. That's a low bar, but you're clearing it. I bought your father's debt. That's pretty close to buying you. But you didn't. You keep saying I'll be free in 3 years. You keep treating me like I'm temporary. Like I'm going to leave. You are going to leave." "How do you know?" "Because nobody stays here. This place..." He gestured at the ranch around them. "It's dying. I'm dying with it. Why would anyone choose that? Maybe because dying alone is worse than dying with someone." He stood abruptly. "Go back to bed, Eliza." "Caleb." "Go." She went, but she didn't sleep. The next morning she found him in the corral working with a young horse that was more wild than broke. "Let me help?" she said. "No." "Why not?" "Because that horse will kick your head off." "Then teach me not to get kicked." He sighed, heavily. "You're persistent. You're stubborn. Takes one to know one." Despite himself, he showed her how to approach slowly, how to read the horse's ears, eyes, stance, how to let the animal set the pace. The horse didn't trust her at first, shied away, snorted warnings. But Eliza was patient, persistent. By the end of the week, the horse was eating from her hand. Caleb watched from the fence. "You're good with her." "Her name's Sable," Eliza said. "She told me herself." "Horses don't talk. This one does. You just have to listen differently." He shook his head, but she caught at the ghost of a smile. Small victories, she thought. I'll take them. That night a rider came. Eliza heard hoofbeats, looked up from the stew she was stirring. Through the window, she saw a man on a fine horse, too fine for a working ranch. Caleb emerged from the barn, his posture instantly guarded. The man dismounted. Expensive boots, tailored coat, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Voss," the man said. "Hale." Eliza's stomach tightened. She knew that name. Everyone in 3 counties knew Victor Hale, Land Baron Cattle King, a man who bought what he wanted and destroyed what he couldn't buy. "Nice place you got here," Hale said, looking around with casual disdain. "What do you want, Victor?" "Just being neighborly. Heard you might be struggling. Thought I'd make an offer." "I'm not selling." "Haven't told you the price yet." "Doesn't matter. Not selling." Hale's smile thinned. "That's unfortunate. Real unfortunate. Because I'm buying up all the land in this valley. Yours is the last piece. Having one stubborn fool holding up progress, well, that's bad for everyone. Then everyone will have to be disappointed. Caleb. Hale's voice dropped, became almost gentle. I know what you lost. I know this place reminds you of her, of them. But holding on to ghosts won't bring them back. Sell me the ranch. Take the money. Start fresh somewhere new. Get off my land. Think about it. My offer's good for 1 week. After that? Hale shrugged. Well, let's just say I have other ways of acquiring property. He mounted his horse, tipped his hat. 1 week, Caleb. Be smart. He rode off, leaving dust and threat hanging in the air. Eliza came outside. Who was that trouble? What kind of trouble? The kind that doesn't take no for an answer. What are you going to do? Caleb looked at the ranch, at the cabin, the barn, the land stretching toward the horizon. What I've always done. Hold the line. Even if it costs you everything. I already lost everything. This land's all that's left, and I'll be damned if I let Victor Hale take it. Eliza felt something shift inside her. Some loyalty she couldn't explain, shouldn't feel. This wasn't her fight. This wasn't her land. In 3 years, she'd be gone. But standing there watching Caleb's shoulders square against the weight of the world, she made a decision. Then we'll hold the line together, she said. He looked at her. You bought 3 years of my work. That includes fighting if we have to. This isn't your battle. Maybe not, but I'm here, and I don't run. For the first time since she'd arrived, Caleb smiled. Really smiled. No, he said quietly. You don't. That night, Eliza lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She thought about her father's money, about the price he'd put on her head, about 3 years of servitude. But she also thought about fence posts and wild horses, about a man who hid his pain in a barn, about land that was dying and refusing to die, and she realized something that terrified her. She didn't want to leave, not in 3 years, maybe not ever, which meant freedom when it came would be the hardest choice she'd ever make. But she didn't have time to dwell on that, because the next morning, 10 head of cattle were missing. Caleb found the gap in the fence at sunrise cut clean, not broken. Wire snipped with purpose, with planning. Hale, he said, running his thumb along the severed wire. Eliza crouched beside him. You're sure? 1 day after he makes his offer? Yeah, I'm sure. What do we do? Fix the fence. Count the loss. Move on. That's it. He steals from you and you just let him? Caleb stood his face hard. I ride into town, accuse Victor Hale of theft with no proof, I'll get laughed out of the sheriff's office. Or worse. So he wins. He wins this round. Doesn't mean he wins the war. But 3 days later, the well water turned foul. Something dead at the bottom. Caleb pulled up a rotting coyote carcass tied to a rock. Eliza watched him haul it out, her jaw clenched. Still think we should just move on? I think we don't have a choice. We always have a choice. Not when the other side has money men and the law in their pocket. She grabbed his arm. Then we get proof. We catch them. And risk getting shot, no. So we just wait. Let them pick us apart piece by piece until there's nothing left. He pulled away from her grip. What do you want me to say, Eliza? That I'll ride out there and face down Victor Hale's hired guns. Get myself killed over 10 cows and a poisoned well. I want you to fight. I am fighting. By surviving. By not giving him an excuse to bury me. She turned away, fury rising hot in her chest. Your wife would be ashamed. The words hung in the air like gunpowder. Caleb went absolutely still. When he spoke, his voice was ice. What did you say? Eliza faced him again, refusing to back down. You heard me. She'd be ashamed. You're letting them destroy everything she loved, everything she built here, and you're just accepting it. You didn't know her? No, but I know you. And the man I've been working beside for 2 months wouldn't roll over this easy. So either you're a coward, or you're so buried in grief you can't see straight anymore. His hand moved fast, Instinctive grabbed her shoulder, not rough but firm, his face inches from hers. "Don't," he said, voice shaking. "Talk about things you don't understand." "Then help me understand." They stood there locked in place, breathing hard. His hand on her shoulder felt like a brand. She could see something breaking behind his eyes, some dam about to give way. He let go, stepped back, turned away. "Her name was Sarah," he said quietly, "and she was braver than I'll ever be. When the fever came, she fought it for 8 days. Kept telling me she'd pull through. Kept smiling even when she couldn't stand. And our daughter Emma, she was 5. 5 years old, and she didn't understand why her mother couldn't get out of bed. Why I kept making her stay away." Eliza's anger dissolved. "Caleb, Sarah died on a Tuesday. Emma died on a Friday. I buried them both on the same day because I couldn't do it twice. Couldn't stand there twice and put people I loved into the ground." His shoulders shook. He didn't cry, but it was close. "So when you ask me why I don't fight," he continued, "it's because I've got nothing left to fight with. I used it all up 2 years ago. I'm empty, Eliza, and empty men don't win wars." She moved without thinking, put her hand on his back, felt the tension there, the weight. "You're not empty," she said. "You're scared. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, because scared men can still choose. Empty men can't." He turned, looked at her. Really looked. "When did you get so smart?" "When I got sold to a stubborn cowboy who needed someone to tell him the truth." Despite everything, he almost smiled. "That's so. That's so." They stood there in the morning light, the ruined well between them, and something shifted. Some understanding that didn't need words. "All right," he said finally. "We fight, but we fight smart." "How?" "We watch, we wait, we catch them in the act, and we make sure the whole town sees it. And if they come at night, then we take shifts. You sleep while I watch, I sleep while you watch. You trust me with that. I trust you with more than that." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. That night they started the watch. Eliza took the first shift sitting on the porch with a rifle across her lap, one Caleb had taught her to shoot that afternoon. "You're a natural," he'd said after she'd hit 3 bottles in a row. "I'm motivated." "That helps." Now in the darkness, she listened. Every sound became a threat, every shadow a potential intruder. Around midnight she heard it, hoofbeats distant but approaching. She stood, raised the rifle, heart hammering. But when the rider came into view, it wasn't one of Hale's men. It was a woman. Middle-aged, respectable-looking, on a sturdy mare. "Hello, the house," the woman called. Eliza kept the rifle up. "State your business." "I'm looking for Caleb Voss. My name's Margaret Chen. I own the general store in town." Caleb emerged from the barn, pulling on his shirt. "Margaret, what are you doing out here this late?" "Came to warn you. Victor Hale was in my store today buying rope and kerosene, more than any honest man needs." Eliza's blood went cold. Caleb's jaw tightened. "How much rope?" "Enough to string up every fence post between here and the county line. And the kerosene, Caleb, he's planning something bad." "Why are you telling me this?" Margaret met his eyes. "Because Sarah was my friend, and because Victor Hale is a bully who's run roughshod over this county for too long. Someone needs to stand up to him. And you think that someone is me. I think that someone better be, because if you fold, the rest of us don't stand a chance." She turned her horse. "Watch your barn, Caleb. Whatever he's planning, I'd bet money it involves fire." She rode off into the darkness. Eliza lowered the rifle. "You believe her?" "Margaret doesn't lie. If she says Hale bought kerosene, he bought kerosene. Then we need to be ready." They doubled the watch, took 2-hour shifts instead of 4, slept in their clothes with boots on. 3 nights passed. Nothing happened. On the 4th night, Eliza was on watch when she smelled it. Smoke. She ran to the barn, found Caleb already awake, already moving. "North pasture," he said. They're burning the grass. They ran together through the darkness. The fire was small, contained to a section of dry grass about 50 yards from the fence line. Deliberate, controlled, a warning. They spent 2 hours beating it out with wet blankets, their hands blistering their lungs full of smoke. When it was finally out, they collapsed on the scorched ground. "This is just the beginning," Caleb said. "I know. It's going to get worse." "I know that too." He looked at her, his face smudged with ash. "You can still leave. Take a horse ride to town, catch the stage. I'll say you ran off. Hale won't care about you." "No." "Eliza." "I said no. We're past that now." "Past what?" "Past you thinking I'm going to run the first time things get hard. I'm not your wife, Caleb. I'm not going to die and leave you, but I'm also not going anywhere while you're fighting this alone." Something broke in his expression. Why do you care this much?" "Because someone has to. And because—" She stopped, caught herself. "Because what?" "Because this place matters. You matter. And I'm tired of watching people I care about get destroyed by men like Victor Hale." The words hung there. People I care about. Caleb reached out, hesitated, then brushed a streak of ash from her cheek. His hand was gentle, careful. "You're going to get hurt," he said quietly. "Probably." I can't lose someone else." "Then don't lose. Win." He pulled his hand back, stood, offered her a hand up. She took it. Walking back to the ranch, neither of them let go until they had to. The attacks escalated. Fence cut. Water fouled. Fire set. A week of guerrilla warfare that never left proof, never showed faces. But Caleb and Eliza held. They repaired. They watched. They waited. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ranch started to change. Eliza had stopped just maintaining, she was improving. Rebuilt the corral with stronger posts. Organized the barn so every tool had a place. Started a garden that actually grew. Caleb watched her work with something like wonder. "Where'd you learn all this?" he asked one afternoon. "Didn't. Just figured it out." "You're good at figuring things out." "Had to be. When your father sees you as a burden, you learn to prove your worth fast." "You're not a burden." She looked up from the seedlings she was planting. "What am I then?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was careful. "You're someone who makes this place feel less like a tomb." "That's a start." "A start toward what?" "Toward you remembering that you're alive, not just haunting the place where you used to live." He knelt beside her, picked up a seedling. "Show me how to plant these." She did. And for an hour they worked side by side in the dirt, not talking, just being. It was the most peaceful hour Eliza had known in years. That peace shattered 2 days later when they rode into town for supplies. The general store was packed Saturday afternoon, everyone restocking for the week. When Eliza and Caleb walked in, the conversation stopped. Margaret Chen greeted them warmly. "Caleb, Eliza, what can I get you?" But before they could answer, a voice cut through the store. Well, Voss finally came out of his hole. Victor Hale stood by the counter, flanked by 2 men Eliza didn't recognize. Big men. Armed men. Caleb's hand drifted toward his gun belt. "Easy," Eliza whispered. "Don't start something you can't finish, Caleb." Hale said, his smile sharp. "Not in front of all these good people." "I'm here for supplies, that's all." "Of course you are. And who's this?" Hale's eyes landed on Eliza. "The girl you bought." The store went dead silent. Eliza felt every eye turn to her, felt the weight of judgment, curiosity, pity. "I'm not bought," she said clearly. "I'm working off a debt." "Same thing, sweetheart." "No, it's not." Hale laughed. "Got yourself a spirited one, Voss. But spirit doesn't change the facts. She's property until that debt's paid. Just like your ranch is going to be my property real soon." Caleb moved forward. Eliza grabbed his arm, held him back. "We're leaving," she said. "Smart girl," Hale called after them. Maybe you can talk some sense into your master. Tell him to take my offer before something unfortunate happens." Outside, Caleb was shaking with rage. "He called you property. I've been called worse. In front of the whole town. Caleb, look at me." She grabbed his face, forced him to meet her eyes. "He wants you angry. He wants you to do something stupid so he can have you arrested or shot. Don't give him what he wants." "What do I give him?" "Nothing. We go home. We keep working. We outlast him. And if we can't, then we make sure the whole town knows what he did to us. We make him bleed reputation if we can't make him bleed any other way." He took a breath. Another. His hands steadied. "When did you become the smart one?" "I've always been the smart one. You just didn't notice." They rode back in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not empty. Full. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She got up, walked to the barn, found Caleb in his usual spot, sitting on a hay bale, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Not since Sarah died. Sleep means dreams. Dreams mean seeing her face and knowing I'll wake up alone." Eliza sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. "You're not alone anymore. For 3 years. Maybe longer." He turned to her. "What?" "I've been thinking about something. About what happens when the 3 years are up. You leave. You're free. What if I don't want to leave?" The words fell between them like stones into still water. "Eliza, what if I stayed, kept working? Made this place something real again?" "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because this ranch feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived. Because you—" She stopped, the words too big to say. "Because what?" "Because you see me. Not as property, not as a burden, just as me." He reached for her hand, held it carefully like something precious. "If you stayed," he said slowly, "it wouldn't be as a worker." "Then as what?" "I don't know yet, but not that." They sat there, hands joined, the future hanging uncertain between them. And in that moment, Eliza realized something terrifying. She wasn't falling in love with Caleb Voss. She'd already fallen. The barn door exploded inward. 4 men, faces covered, torches in hand. Caleb shoved Eliza behind him, reaching for the rifle that wasn't there. "Evening, Voss," one of the men said. "Mr. Hale sends his regards." "Get out of my barn." "Can't do that. See, we got orders, and orders are orders." The man threw his torch into the hay. It caught instantly, flames racing up the dry stalks like they'd been waiting for this moment. Eliza screamed. Caleb lunged forward, but 2 of the men grabbed him, held him back. "Watch it burn," the leader said. "Watch it all burn. And know this, the house is next if you don't sell." They released him, ran for their horses, disappeared into the night. The barn was already half engulfed. "The animals!" Eliza shouted, running for the stalls. "Eliza, no!" But she was already inside, throwing open gates, slapping horses on their haunches to drive them out. Smoke filled her lungs. Heat seared her skin. Caleb was beside her, suddenly pulling her toward the door. "We have to go. Sable's still inside. She's gone. The back gate's open. I saw her run. Now move." He dragged her out just as part of the roof collapsed. They fell to the ground outside, coughing, gasping, watching everything burn. The cabin was still safe. The animals had scattered but would come back. But the barn, Sarah's barn, the place Caleb had called home for 2 years, was gone. Eliza felt tears on her face, couldn't tell if they were from smoke or grief. Caleb sat beside her, his face blank. Shock, maybe. Or something deeper. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be. You saved the horses. You saved me." "They're going to keep coming." "I know. So what do we do?" He looked at the burning barn, then at her. When he spoke, his voice was steel. "We make them pay. Every last one of them." "How?" "Tomorrow we ride into town. We talk to the sheriff, the mayor, everyone. We tell them what happened. We make this public." "They'll deny it." Let them. Because the whole town just saw us shopping this afternoon. They know we're not making this up. And if Victor Hale thinks he can burn me out without consequences... Caleb stood his shadow long in the firelight. Then he's about to learn he picked the wrong fight. Eliza stood beside him, her hand finding his. "Together," she asked. "Together," he agreed. And watching the barn burn, feeling Caleb's hand in hers, Eliza understood something fundamental. This was no longer about debt or freedom or 3-year contracts. This was war, and she was done running from fights that mattered. And she was done running from fights that mattered. But first, they had to survive the night. The fire burned until dawn, leaving nothing but ash and twisted metal where the barn had stood. Caleb walked through the ruins in silence, picking up pieces of his old life, a horseshoe, a broken lantern, the charred remains of a trunk that had held Sarah's things. Eliza found him standing over that trunk, his shoulders rigid. "We should go," she said gently, "before they come back. Let them come." Caleb. He turned, and she saw something new in his face. Not grief anymore. Rage. Cold, focused rage. "I'm done hiding. Done being careful. They burned my barn. They could have killed us both. And for what land money?" He kicked at the ash. "No. We ride to town now. We tell everyone. And we don't leave until someone listens." They saddled the horses that had returned at dawn, Sable among them unharmed. The ride to town took 2 hours, but neither of them spoke. The silence was full of purpose now, not emptiness. When they reached the main street, people stared. At Caleb's smoke-blackened clothes, at Eliza's blistered hands, at the fury radiating from them both. The sheriff's office was in the center of town, a squat building with barred windows and a faded sign. Caleb walked in like he owned it. Sheriff Wade looked up from his desk, a heavy man with suspicious eyes. "Voss, what brings you in?" "My barn burned last night. 4 men with torches, sent by Victor Hale." Wade leaned back in his chair. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth. You see their faces. They wore masks." "Then how do you know Hale sent them?" "Because he threatened me a week ago. Because he's been attacking my property for 2 weeks. Because everyone in this town knows he wants my land." Wade picked up a pencil, tapped it on the desk. "Knowing and proving are different things, Caleb. You got proof witnesses. Anything besides your word. My word used to mean something in this town. That was before you holed up on that ranch for 2 years and stopped being part of the community. Things change." Eliza stepped forward. "I'm a witness. I was there. I saw them." Wade looked her over. "You're the girl he bought, right?" "I'm working off a debt. Same thing. And your testimony means nothing. You're bound to him. You'd say whatever he tells you to say." "I'm telling the truth." "Maybe. But in a court of law it won't matter." Wade stood his bulk, filling the small office. "Look, Caleb, I'm sorry about your barn. Truly. But unless you got real evidence, there's nothing I can do. Victor Hale is a respected businessman. You're a grieving widower who hasn't been right since his family died. Who do you think the judge will believe?" Caleb's hand moved toward his gun. Eliza grabbed his wrist. "Don't!" Wade noticed. His own hand drifted to his holster. "You really want to threaten a lawman, Voss, because that'll give me a reason to lock you up right now." "We're leaving," Eliza said, pulling Caleb toward the door. Outside, Caleb was shaking. "He's in Hale's pocket." "I know. Everyone is. The sheriff, the judge, probably half the town." "Not everyone. Margaret helped us. There have to be others." "And how do we find them?" "We make noise. We make this so public that people have to choose sides." They walked to the town square where Saturday market was in full swing. Farmers selling produce, craftsmen hawking goods, families shopping and gossiping. Caleb climbed onto the back of a wagon, his voice carrying across the square. "Listen to me. All of you. Last night 4 men burned my barn on Victor Hale's orders. They could have killed us. They nearly did. And the sheriff won't do a damn thing about it because Hale owns him." The market went quiet. People stopped, turned, listened. I know what you're thinking, Caleb continued. That I'm crazy, that I'm bitter, that I'm making this up. But look at me. Look at this girl beside me. We're covered in ash from fighting a fire we didn't start. And tomorrow, or next week, or next month, it'll be one of you. Because Victor Hale doesn't just want my land. He wants all of it. Every ranch, every farm, every piece of this valley. And he'll burn, steal, and kill to get it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people nodded. Others looked away. Then a voice cut through. That's a lie. Victor Hale stepped out of the general store, flanked by his men. He looked calm, amused even. Caleb Voss is a troubled man, Hale said, addressing the crowd. He lost his family. He lost his mind. And now he's lashing out at anyone successful enough to threaten his pride. You burned my barn, Caleb shouted. I was in my office all night, with witnesses. Unlike you, I have proof of my whereabouts. Your men are respectable ranch hands who were with me. Sheriff Wade already confirmed it. Hale smiled. You see, Caleb, when you make wild accusations, you better have evidence. Otherwise, you just look desperate. The crowd was shifting now. Eliza could feel it. Some still believed Caleb, but others were starting to doubt. He's lying, she said, stepping forward. I saw the men. I heard them say Hale sent them. Hale's smile widened. Ah, yes. The indentured girl. How convenient that you'd back your master's story. I'm not lying. Of course you're not, dear. You're just confused. Trauma does that. He turned to the crowd. This is what happens when good people fall on hard times. They see conspiracies where there are none. I've offered Caleb a generous price for his land, more than it's worth, honestly. But he refuses to sell. So now he invents stories to make me the villain. The only thing I'm inventing, Caleb said, his voice dangerously quiet, is restraint. Because what I really want to do is put a bullet between your eyes. Hale's men moved their hands to their guns. The crowd gasped, stepped back. Did everyone hear that? Hale asked. A death threat. In public. Sheriff Wade, you witnessed that, didn't you? Wade had appeared at the edge of the crowd. I did. And what's the penalty for threatening to murder a citizen? Arrest. Maybe jail time. Hale nodded. Then I think you have a duty to perform, Sheriff. Wade moved toward Caleb. I'm sorry, Voss, but you can't go around threatening people. He burned my barn. You got no proof of that, but I got 50 witnesses who just heard you threaten to kill him. Wade pulled out handcuffs. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Eliza stepped between them. No. Miss, move aside. I won't. This is wrong. Everyone here knows it's wrong. She turned to the crowd. Look at us. Really look. We rode in here with ash on our clothes and burns on our hands. We're not making this up. We're not crazy. We're the only ones brave enough to say what everyone's thinking, that Victor Hale is a bully who's taking over this valley one ranch at a time. And if you let them arrest Caleb for speaking the truth, then tomorrow it'll be you. Your land, your family, your life. Silence. Then Margaret Chen stepped forward. She's right. Another voice. They burned my fence last month. I didn't report it because I was scared. Another. They ran off my cattle. Another. They poisoned my creek. The crowd was shifting again. People speaking up, sharing stories, finding courage. Wade looked uncertain now. That's all hearsay. It's a pattern, Margaret said firmly. And it's time someone investigated it properly. Hale's smile had vanished. You're making a mistake, Margaret. All of you are. The only mistake, she replied, was staying quiet this long. Wade lowered the handcuffs. I'll need to look into these claims, properly. You do that, Hale said coldly. And while you're at it, investigate who started the fire at Voss's barn. Could have been lightning. Could have been carelessness. Could have been Voss himself looking for sympathy. I was there, Eliza said. I saw 4 men. You saw what you wanted to see, or what he told you to see. Hale stepped closer to her, his voice dropping. You're bound to him, girl. You don't have a choice about what you say or don't say. That's how ownership works. Something in Eliza snapped. Her hand moved before she could think, slapping Hale across the face so hard the crack echoed across the square. The crowd gasped. Hale touched his cheek, his eyes going cold. "You just assaulted me, in front of witnesses, and I'd do it again," Eliza said. "I'm not property, I'm not owned, and I'm not afraid of you." "You should be." Caleb moved between them. "Touch her and I'll kill you. Witnesses or no witnesses." For a moment, the square held its breath. Two men face to face, the violence between them so thick you could taste it. Then Hale stepped back. "This isn't over." "No," Caleb agreed. "It's just beginning." Hale and his men left. The crowd slowly dispersed, some stopping to shake Caleb's hand, others hurrying away like they'd witnessed something they shouldn't have. Wade approached them. "You two need to be careful. Hale's got influence. What happened here today, it's going to have consequences." "Let it," Caleb said. Back at the ranch, they worked in silence to repair what they could. The barn was gone, but Caleb started marking out where they'd build a new one. Stronger. Better. "We can't afford this," Eliza said, watching him measure. "We'll find a way." "How?" "I've got savings. Not much, but enough to buy lumber." "That money was supposed to last you years." "It'll last us as long as it needs to." She noticed the word. Us. That night they ate dinner in the cabin, the first time Caleb had eaten inside since she'd arrived. He sat across from her, the lamplight making shadows of his face. "You slapped him," he said. "I know." "That was stupid. I know that too." "It was also the bravest thing I've ever seen." She looked up, met his eyes. "He called me property." "You're not." "I know, but hearing him say it, hearing him use that word like it was fact, I just—" She stopped, her throat tight. "I spent 18 years being treated like I was worth less than livestock. I'm not going back to that. Not for him. Not for anyone." Caleb reached across the table, took her hand. "You won't have to. 3 years or 30, you're not property here. You're—" He paused, searching for words. "You're the only reason I'm still fighting. The only reason any of this matters." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when your 3 years are up, I'm tearing up that contract. I'm setting you free. Officially. Legally. In front of the whole town if I have to." Her heart was pounding. "And then what?" "Then you choose. Stay or go. But whatever you choose, it'll be yours. Not your father's. Not mine. Yours." The weight of those words settled over them. "What if I choose to stay?" she asked quietly. "Then I'd be the luckiest man in the territory." "And what would I be?" "Still just a worker." He stood, came around the table, knelt beside her chair. "You'd be whatever you wanted to be. Partner? Friend? Something more if—" He stopped, his courage failing. She cupped his face. "If what? If you could ever see me as more than the man who bought your father's debt." "I already do." He kissed her then, gentle at first, then deeper. 2 years of loneliness and grief and hope pouring into that single moment. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "This is a bad idea," he said. "Probably. You're bound to me. People will say I'm taking advantage." "Let them say it." "Eliza, I'm not afraid of what people think anymore. I'm only afraid of losing this. Losing you." He pulled her close, his forehead against hers. "You won't lose me. I promise." They stayed like that, holding each other until the lamp burned low. But outside in the darkness something moved. A horse. A rider. Watching. Reporting back to Victor Hale that Caleb Voss and his girl weren't just surviving. They were falling in love. And love, Hale knew, was a weapon he could use. The next morning, Eliza woke to find Caleb already gone. A note on the table. "Went to town for lumber. Back by noon." She dressed, started her chores, tried not to worry. Noon came and went. No Caleb. By 2 o'clock she was pacing. By 3 she was saddling Sable. She found him 5 miles from the ranch, his wagon overturned, the lumber scattered across the road. He was sitting on the ground, holding his ribs, blood on his face. "Caleb!" She jumped off. Sable ran to him. "What happened?" "Hale's men. They were waiting. Said if I tried to rebuild, they'd burn it down again. And again. Until I sold. We need to get you home." They said something else. His voice was strained. "They said they know about you. About us. That if I don't sell within a week, they'll make sure you disappear. That bound servants go missing all the time, and nobody asks questions." Fear shot through her. "They threatened me. They threatened to kill you, Eliza, and make it look like you ran away." She helped him stand, got him into the wagon. "Then we fight back, harder." "How?" "They have more men, more money, more everything. They don't have what we have, which is the truth, and people who are finally ready to hear it." But when they got back to the ranch, they found a message nailed to the cabin door. 7 days. Sell or suffer. This is your last warning. Eliza tore it down, crumpled it, threw it in the fire. "Let them come," she said. "Let them try." Caleb looked at her, this girl who'd been sold like cattle, who'd transformed from broken to fierce in 3 months, who was ready to fight a war she had no obligation to fight. "We're going to lose," he said quietly. "Maybe, but we're going to lose on our feet, not on our knees." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "How did I get so lucky?" "You paid $40 in a bag of grain. Best investment I ever made." They spent the next 2 days preparing, boarding up windows, stockpiling ammunition, setting traps around the property line. On the 3rd day, Margaret Chen arrived with 3 other ranch owners, people who'd spoken up in the town square. "We're with you," Margaret said. "Whatever happens, you're not alone." "This could get you killed," Caleb warned. "Then we die for something that matters." They formed a plan. A meeting at the church neutral ground where the whole town would gather. Where Caleb would make his case one final time. Where they'd force Victor Hale to answer for his crimes in front of everyone. "He won't come," Eliza said. "He'll come," Margaret replied. "Because if he doesn't, it looks like an admission of guilt. And Victor Hale's too arrogant to let that stand." The meeting was set for Sunday. 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for the fight of their lives. 3 days until everything changed. And lying in Caleb's arms that night, Eliza understood something profound. She'd been bought as a slave, but she'd fight as a free woman. And that made all the difference. And that made all the difference. Because when Saturday came, one day before the church meeting, Eliza woke to find Caleb's side of the bed empty and cold. She found him outside, staring at the burned barn ruins, a piece of paper in his hand. "What is it?" she asked. He handed it to her without speaking. The handwriting was crude, the message clear. "We have proof you set the fire yourself. Insurance fraud. Confess and leave town, or we show the sheriff the evidence Monday morning." Eliza crumpled the paper. "It's a bluff." "What if it's not?" "Then it's a lie. We were together when the barn burned. I'm your witness. You're bound to me. Your testimony means nothing, remember?" Caleb's voice was hollow. "They've thought of everything. If I show up at that meeting tomorrow, they'll have me arrested Monday. If I run, I look guilty. Either way, I lose the ranch. So we get ahead of it. We go to Sheriff Wade now, tell him it's fabricated. Wade won't believe us. He barely tolerated us the last time." Caleb sat heavily on a fence post. "Maybe I should just sell. Take what I can get. Start over somewhere else." Eliza grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at her. "Listen to yourself. This is exactly what they want. They beat you down until you give up. Well, I didn't survive 18 years with a father who hated me just to watch you surrender now. This isn't your fight. Stop saying that. It stopped being just your fight the moment I chose to stay. The moment we—" She stopped. The words caught in her throat. "The moment we what?" "The moment we became something more than a contract." He pulled her close, his voice breaking. "I can't let them hurt you. Then don't give them the chance. We go to that meeting tomorrow, we tell the truth, and we trust that enough people in this town are tired of being bullied. And if they're not, then at least we fought back. They spent the rest of the day gathering their evidence, bills of sale proving Caleb hadn't bought extra kerosene or rope, testimonies from Margaret and the other ranchers about Hale's threats, a timeline showing Caleb couldn't have set the fire himself. That night neither of them slept. They sat together on the porch watching the stars, knowing tomorrow would change everything. "I need to tell you something," Caleb said as dawn approached. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." Eliza's stomach tightened. "What?" "The contract. The one your father signed. It was for 3 years like I said, but there was a clause a way out earlier." "What kind of clause?" "If you married someone the debt transferred to your husband, you'd be free of me." She went still. "You're telling me I could have left months ago if I'd found someone to marry?" "Technically, yes. And you didn't think to mention this, because I didn't want you to leave." The honesty of it hit her like a fist. "That's not your decision to make." "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm telling you now because tomorrow if things go wrong, you need to know you have options. Margaret has a nephew in town. Good man. He'd marry you if I asked him to. Get you free of all this." Eliza stood, anger rising. "You think I want to marry some stranger, trade one contract for another? I think I want you safe, and if marrying him keeps you out of Hale's reach, I'd rather die than marry someone I don't love." The words hung between them. Caleb rose slowly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to marry Margaret's nephew. I don't want to marry some random man who'd take me out of pity or obligation." She stepped closer. "I want to marry someone who sees me, who chose me, who'd burn his whole life down rather than let someone hurt me." "Eliza, I'm saying I want to marry you, Caleb Voss. Not because of a contract, not because I'm bound to you, but because I love you. And I think I hope you love me too." He kissed her, then deep and desperate, his hands in her hair, her arms around his neck. When they broke apart, he was crying. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. If we do this, if we actually get married, it can't be about the contract. It has to be real. It will be real, the realest thing I've ever done. Then we'll do it right, after tomorrow, after we face Hale, after we win. And if we don't win, then we'll do it anyway, because I'm not dying without making you my wife." Sunday morning came too fast. They dressed carefully, Caleb in his best shirt, Eliza in the only dress she owned that wasn't work-stained. Margaret arrived with the other ranchers just after dawn. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Caleb admitted. "But we're going anyway." The church was packed when they arrived. Every pew filled, people standing along the walls, others gathered outside the windows. The whole town had come. Victor Hale sat in the front row, his lawyer beside him, his hired men stationed at the exits. Sheriff Wade stood near the pulpit looking uncomfortable. The Reverend, an old man named Thomas Clay, called the meeting to order. "We're here," Reverend Clay said, "to address allegations of misconduct, violence, and intimidation. Caleb Voss has requested this forum to speak. Mr. Voss, the floor is yours." Caleb stood, walked to the front, every eye on him. "Most of you know me," he began. "I've lived here 15 years, raised a family here, buried them here. I'm not a troublemaker, I'm not a liar, and I'm not crazy no matter what some people want you to think." He pulled out the burned timber from his barn. "This is what's left after 4 men torched my barn on Victor Hale's orders. I've got witnesses, I've got a pattern of attacks, and I've got a whole list of other ranchers who've suffered the same treatment." Hale stood. "May I respond?" "Not yet," Reverend Clay said. "Let him finish," Caleb continued. "Hale wants my land, he's made that clear, but when I refused to sell, he decided to take it by force. Stolen cattle, poisoned wells, cut fences, and when none of that worked, he sent men to burn me out." "That's slander," Hale's lawyer interjected. "It's the truth, and I can prove it." Margaret stood. "I can corroborate everything he said. Hale approached me 6 months ago, wanted to buy my store. When I refused, my shipments started arriving damaged. My suppliers stopped working with me. I had to sell at a loss just to survive. Another rancher stood. Same here. Hale offered me half what my land was worth. When I said no, my herd got sick. Vet said it was poisoned grain. Another. He threatened my family. Said accidents happen on ranches. Said I should think about my children's safety. One by one, people stood, shared their stories. The pattern was undeniable. Hale remained calm throughout, his smile never wavering. When the testimonies ended, he stood. I've listened patiently to these accusations, Hale said smoothly. And I'm saddened that people I've tried to help see me as an enemy. Yes, I've made offers to buy land. That's business. Yes, some people have had misfortunes. That's frontier life. But to suggest I'm somehow orchestrating a campaign of terror, that's absurd. He pulled out his own stack of papers. I have documentation of every business transaction. Receipts, contracts, all legal, all proper. What Mr. Voss and his friends have are stories, coincidences. And in the case of his barn, Hale's smile widened. Evidence of insurance fraud. The church erupted in whispers. That's a lie, Caleb said. Is it? Hale handed papers to Sheriff Wade. My investigator found proof that Mr. Voss purchased large quantities of kerosene 3 weeks before the fire. The same kerosene used to burn his own barn. He was behind on his mortgage, desperate for money, so he staged the fire and blamed me. Wade looked at the papers, his face grim. Caleb, these receipts have your signature. I never bought kerosene. That's forged. The merchant swears it's genuine. Then the merchant is lying or being paid to lie. Hale shook his head sadly. This is what grief does to a man. Makes him paranoid, desperate. I've been patient, tried to help, offered fair prices. But Mr. Voss would rather destroy himself than accept reality. Eliza couldn't stay quiet anymore. She stood, her voice ringing out. Everything he's saying is a lie. I was there when the barn burned. I saw Hale's men. I heard them say he sent them. The indentured girl, Hale said dismissively. Of course she'd defend her master. She has no choice. I have every choice, and I choose the truth. Do you? Hale turned to the crowd. Did you know that Caleb Voss has been intimate with this girl? His bound servant. Some might call that coercion. Abuse of power. The church went silent. Caleb's face went white. We're not. I have witnesses who've seen you together, seen you kiss her, share a bed. Hale's voice dripped false concern. Now I'm not one to judge a man's private life. But when that man is accused of crimes, and his only witness is a girl he's been taking advantage of, well, that raises questions about credibility. Eliza felt the room shift, saw the judgment in people's eyes, the disgust. I love him, she said clearly, and he loves me. What we do is nobody's business but ours. Love. Hale laughed. You're property girl. You don't get to love. You get to obey. Something inside Eliza shattered and reformed harder than before. She walked to the front of the church, stood beside Caleb. I'm not property. I never was. And I'm done letting men like you tell me what I am. She turned to Caleb. You said we'd do this right, after we won, but I don't want to wait. Eliza, marry me, right now, in front of everyone. The church erupted, people shouting, Wade calling for order, Hale's men moving forward. Caleb grabbed her hands. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Reverend Clay stepped forward. This is highly irregular. But it's legal, Margaret called out. A reverend can perform a marriage with witnesses present, and we're all witnesses. She's still bound to a contract, Hale protested. She can't consent to marriage. Actually, Margaret's voice was sharp. According to territorial law, marriage nullifies indenture contracts. If she marries Caleb, the debt is considered paid in full. She becomes a free woman. Hale's face went dark. That's not how this works. That's exactly how it works. I've checked the law myself. Margaret pulled out a law book. Section 47, subsection 3. Marriage supersedes all prior debts and obligations for women entering into voluntary union. Caleb looked at Eliza. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me, to this fight, to whatever comes next. I'm already tied to you. This just makes it official. He turned to Reverend Clay. Will you do it? The old reverend looked at Hale, then at Caleb and Eliza, then at the packed church. I will, he said, because marriage is sacred, and if two people are willing to commit to each other in the middle of all this chaos, then God's hand is in it. Hale slammed his fist on the pew. This is a farce. This is a wedding, Reverend Clay said firmly, and you'll respect it or leave my church. The ceremony was short. No rings, no fancy vows, just the old words spoken in a church filled with witnesses. Do you, Caleb Voss, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Eliza Rowan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Caleb kissed her, and the church erupted, some people cheering, others protesting, chaos everywhere. When they pulled apart, Eliza turned to face Hale. I'm free now, she said. Legally, completely, which means my testimony counts, and I'm willing to swear under oath that your men burned that barn. Hale's smile had vanished completely. You've made a mistake, Mrs. Voss. The only mistake was ever being afraid of you. Sheriff Wade stepped forward, looking torn. I still have to investigate the fraud allegations. Investigate away, Caleb said. You'll find those receipts are forgeries, and when you do, you'll have to ask yourself who had the means and motive to forge them. Careful, Voss, Hale warned. You're making serious accusations against a respected businessman. I'm stating facts, and I've got a whole church full of witnesses who've heard both sides now. Let them decide who's telling the truth. Margaret stood again. I move that we form a citizens committee to investigate all of Victor Hale's business dealings in this valley. Full transparency, public records, everything. Seconded. Another rancher called. Hands went up across the church, more than half the room. Hale's face went red. You can't do this. We just did, Margaret said calmly. Democracy in action. Victor, isn't that what you always preach about? Hale looked at his lawyer, his hired men, the room full of people who'd finally found their courage. This isn't over, he said quietly. No, Caleb agreed. But it's not going your way anymore. Hale stormed out, his men following. The church erupted in conversation. People crowding around Caleb and Eliza, offering congratulations, sharing more stories about Hale's intimidation. Wade approached them quietly. I'll look into those receipts, honestly this time, but Voss, he paused. Watch your back. Hale doesn't lose gracefully. I know. Outside the church, the sun was high and bright. Caleb took Eliza's hand, his wife's hand, and they walked through a gauntlet of well-wishers. We did it, Eliza whispered. We started it. Finishing it is going to be harder. I know, but we'll do it together. Together, he agreed. They rode back to the ranch, newly married, newly emboldened, knowing the real battle was just beginning. But when they arrived home, they found Margaret waiting with a grim expression. What is it? Caleb asked. Hale's already making his move. He's called in his debts. Everyone who owes him money, he's demanding immediate payment. Either they pay in full or he takes their land. How many people? 15 ranches, maybe more. People who stood with you today, he's destroying them. Eliza felt sick. Because of us. Because he's a vindictive bastard, Margaret corrected. But yes, your stand gave them the courage to speak up. Now he's punishing them for it. Caleb's jaw set. Then we help them, however we can. With what you're barely holding on yourself? I don't know. But we'll figure something out. Margaret looked at them both. You two really are going to fight him to the end, aren't you? We don't have a choice. Eliza said. Everyone has a choice. Not anymore. Not after today. We drew a line. Now we have to hold it. Margaret nodded slowly. Then I hope you're ready, because Hale's not going to stop until one of you is dead. She left them standing in the yard, the weight of her words settling like stones. Caleb pulled Eliza close. I'm sorry I got you into this. You didn't get me into anything. I walked in with my eyes open. But now you're my wife. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. Eliza, nothing, because I won't let it. She pulled back, looked him in the eye. We're going to win this. We're going to beat Hale, and then we're going to build a life that's worth all this fighting. You sound so sure. I am sure, because for the first time in my life, I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm standing my ground, and I'm standing it with you. He kissed her forehead. How did I survive 2 years without you? You didn't. You just existed, but now you're alive again. We both are. That night, lying in bed as husband and wife, they made plans, strategies, contingencies. But underneath it all was a truth they both knew. Victor Hale had the money, the power, the connections. All they had was each other. And somehow, that had to be enough. But dawn brought news that proved it wasn't. Margaret arrived before breakfast, her face ashen. 3 families lost their ranches overnight. Hale foreclosed. Sheriff Wade stood by and watched them get evicted. Caleb slammed his fist on the table. Wade said he'd investigate. Wade answers to whoever pays him most. And right now that's Hale. Margaret sat heavily. It gets worse. Hale's filed a complaint against you. Says you coerced Eliza into marriage to dodge the debt. He's demanding the marriage be annulled and the original contract reinstated. Eliza's blood went cold. He can't do that. He's trying. Got a judge coming from the territorial capital next week to review the case. What judge? Caleb demanded. Harrison Blackwell. Caleb's face went white. No. You know him. He's Hale's cousin, married to Hale's sister. He's not coming to judge fairly, he's coming to rubber stamp whatever Hale wants. Eliza stood pacing. Then we need evidence. Real, undeniable evidence that Hale's been breaking the law. We've been trying to get that for weeks. Then we try harder. We find his men. We make them talk. We get something that even a corrupt judge can't ignore. Margaret shook her head. His men are loyal. They won't turn. Everyone has a price, Eliza said, or a breaking point. We just need to find it. Caleb looked at his wife, married less than 24 hours and already fighting like a general. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Hale's men didn't just burn our barn. They've done other things. Worse things, probably. And somewhere there's evidence, records, orders. Something Hale didn't want anyone to find. Where? His ranch, his office. Somewhere he felt safe enough to keep documentation. You want to break into Victor Hale's house? I want to find the truth. However, we have to. Margaret stood. That's suicide. His place is guarded. Then we need a distraction. Something big enough to pull his men away. They spent the day planning. That night, under cover of darkness, they moved. Umbio. Margaret organized a town meeting, public, loud, designed to draw attention. Everyone who'd stood with them at the church showed up, making noise, demanding answers from Sheriff Wade about the foreclosures. While the town was occupied, Caleb and Eliza rode to Hale's ranch. The main house sat dark against the hills, imposing and cold. 2 guards at the front gate, another patrolling the perimeter. We'll never get past them, Eliza whispered. We don't have to. Hale's office isn't in the main house. It's in the old foreman's cabin out back. That's where he does his real business. They circled wide, coming in from the north where the land was roughest. Eliza's heart hammered so hard she thought the guards might hear it. The cabin was locked. Caleb pulled a knife, worked the latch until it gave. Inside, moonlight filtered through dirty windows. A desk, filing cabinets, stacks of papers. Start looking, Caleb said. They worked in silence, rifling through documents, bills of sale, property deeds, legal contracts. Nothing incriminating at first. Then Eliza found the ledger. "Caleb, look at this." It was a record of payments, money paid to various men with dates and notes beside each entry. J. Parker, fence cutting Voss property, $50. T. Morgan, well poisoning Chen land, $75. R. Hayes, barn fire Voss property, $200. Everything, every attack, every crime, documented with Hale's own hand. "This is it," Caleb breathed. "This is proof." Eliza was about to agree when the door crashed open. Victor Hale stood there, a rifle in his hands, two of his men behind him. "Looking for something?" he asked. Caleb moved in front of Eliza. "We're leaving." "I don't think so. You're on my property. Trespassing. Breaking and entering. That's a hanging offense in some territories. You've been committing crimes for months. Prove it." Hale's smile was vicious. "Oh, wait, you can't. Because any evidence you might have found here? Well, that was obtained illegally. Won't hold up in any court." Eliza clutched the ledger. "People will believe us. Will they? The word of a desperate rancher and his bought bride against a respected landowner? I don't think so." One of Hale's men stepped forward, reached for the ledger. Eliza threw it. Not to Caleb. Through the window. Glass shattered. The ledger sailed into the darkness outside. "Go!" she shouted to Caleb. "Get it!" Caleb dove through the window. Hale's men rushed after him. Hale grabbed Eliza, yanked her back. "Stupid girl, that was your last mistake." She drove her elbow into his ribs, broke free, ran for the door. He caught her ankle. She fell hard, her chin cracking against the floor. "You should have stayed property," Hale hissed, dragging her back. "Should have kept your mouth shut. Should have known your place." "My place?" Eliza spat, kicking at him. "Is wherever I choose it to be?" She connected with his face. He released her with a curse. Outside, she could hear fighting. Caleb versus two men. She ran toward the sound, found Caleb on the ground, the ledger beside him, one man raising a club to strike. Eliza hit the man from behind, knocked him sideways, grabbed the ledger, ran. Caleb was up running beside her. Behind them, Hale was shouting orders, more men emerging from the main house. They reached the horses, mounted, rode hard into the night with bullets kicking up dirt around them. They didn't stop until they'd reached the edge of town, their horses heaving, both of them bleeding from various cuts and scrapes. "You threw it out the window," Caleb said, half laughing, half disbelieving. "I panicked." "You were brilliant. We got it. We actually got it." They rode to Margaret's store, woke her by pounding on the door. When she saw the ledger, she went pale. "This is everything, every crime, in his own handwriting." "Will it be enough?" Eliza asked. "It better be. Because he's going to come for you now, both of you. He won't wait for the judge. He'll try to kill you and claim it was self-defense." Caleb looked at Eliza. "We need to make this public, tonight, before he can spin it." "How?" Margaret smiled grimly. "I know how." An hour later, every business owner in town was awake and reading copies of the ledger. Margaret had a printing press in her store used for flyers and notices. They'd copied the most damaging pages, distributed them to everyone who'd stood with them. By sunrise, the whole town knew. By noon, people were gathering in the square. Not for a meeting this time. For a reckoning. Sheriff Wade tried to keep order, but the crowd was angry. 15 families evicted. Dozens more threatened. Years of bullying and intimidation, all documented in Hale's own hand. "Where is he?" someone shouted. "Bring him out. Make him answer for this." Hale arrived with his men, his lawyer, his usual confidence. But when he saw the crowd, something flickered in his eyes. Fear. "These accusations are false," he declared. "That ledger is forged." "It's your handwriting," Margaret called out. "We've compared it to your signed contracts. It's a perfect match." "Then it was stolen illegally. It won't stand up in court." "Maybe not," a new voice said. Everyone turned. A man in a suit stepped forward, older, distinguished, carrying a briefcase. "Who are you?" Hale demanded. "Raymond Foster, attorney from the territorial government. I've been investigating reports of land fraud in this county for 3 months. He held up the ledger. This confirms everything. Mr. Hale, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder. Hale's face went purple. You can't arrest me. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Wade moved forward, reluctantly pulling out handcuffs. Victor Hale, you're under arrest. Hale's men reached for their guns. The crowd surged forward. Don't, Foster said calmly. Your employer is finished. If you fight now, you'll hang alongside him. If you cooperate, you might just keep your lives. One by one, the men lowered their weapons. Wade cuffed Hale. I'm sorry it came to this, Victor. You're sorry. Hale laughed bitterly. You took my money for years, and now you're arresting me. I'm doing my job, finally. As they led Hale away, he turned to Caleb and Eliza. This isn't over. I have lawyers, connections. I'll be out in a week. Maybe, Caleb said. But your reputation is gone. Your power is gone, and everyone knows what you did. They'll forget. No, Eliza said quietly. They won't, because we won't let them. The crowd erupted in cheers as Hale was taken away, but Eliza felt no joy, just exhaustion, and relief, and something else, a hollow space where fear used to live. That night the town held an impromptu celebration. Food, music, people dancing in the streets. Caleb and Eliza stood at the edge of it all watching. It's really over, she said. The legal part is. But we've got a ranch to rebuild, families to help, a lot of work ahead. I know. He pulled something from his pocket. The contract, the one her father had signed selling her for $40 in grain. I've been carrying this since the day I bought it, he said. Kept it as a reminder of what I'd done, what I'd agreed to. Caleb, I want to burn it. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. I want there to be no doubt that you're free, that you always were. I'm already free. We got married. I know, but that made you free legally. This makes you free completely. No paper, no contract, no debt between us. He walked to the bonfire in the town square. People noticed, grew quiet. Everyone listen, Caleb called out. 3 months ago, I bought a contract. I paid $40 and a bag of grain for the labor of Eliza Rowan. It was legal. It was binding. And it was wrong. He held up the contract so everyone could see it. This paper said I owned her labor for 3 years. It said she was bound to me. It said she had no choice. His voice grew stronger. But Eliza Rowan was never property. She was never mine to own. She was a person who deserved respect, freedom, and choice from the very first day. He looked at Eliza. You stayed not because you had to, but because you chose to. You fought not because you were bound to me, but because you're braver than anyone I've ever known. And you married me not because it freed you from a contract, but because... His voice broke. Because somehow, despite everything, you loved me. Tears streamed down Eliza's face. Caleb turned back to the crowd. So I'm destroying this contract. Not because the law says it's void, but because it should never have existed in the first place. Because people cannot be bought. And because the woman I love deserves better than a piece of paper that once called her property. He threw the contract into the fire. It caught immediately, curling and blackening, the words disappearing into ash. The crowd erupted. People cheering, crying, embracing. Eliza walked to Caleb, took his face in her hands. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. For you. For me. For everyone who's ever been treated like they were worth less than they are. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. And I swear on everything I have, you'll never be anything less than my equal, my partner, my choice. They kissed and the whole town cheered. Attorney Foster approached them later. I'll need your testimony, both of you, to make sure Hale stays locked up. You'll have it, Caleb promised. And the families he evicted, we're working on that. The contracts were fraudulent based on inflated debts and forged documents. We'll get their land back. How long will that take? Months, maybe a year, but it will happen. Eliza thought about those families. 15 ranches, dozens of people. They need help now, not in a year. What are you suggesting? Foster asked. Pool resources. The families who still have land, they can take in the ones who don't. Share the work. Share the profits. Help each other rebuild. Margaret stepped forward. Like a cooperative. Exactly. We did it during the war. Communities coming together. Why not now? Caleb squeezed her hand. When did you become so smart about these things? When I realized that the only way to beat people like Hale is to refuse to fight alone. Over the next weeks, they made it happen. Families moving in together. Sharing equipment, livestock labor. The ranch owners who'd stood with Caleb opened their doors. The evicted families found shelter work purpose. The Voss Ranch became a hub. People coming and going helping rebuild the barn plant crops, mend fences. Eliza found herself at the center of it all. Organizing, planning, mediating disputes, making sure everyone had what they needed. One evening, Caleb found her sitting on the porch exhausted but content. You're good at this, he said, sitting beside her. At what? Leading. Bringing people together. I'm just doing what needs doing. No, you're doing more than that. You're building something, a community, a future. She leaned against him. We're building it, together. Together, he agreed. 3 months later, the trial concluded. Hale was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His lands were seized, sold off to pay restitution to his victims. The families got their ranches back. The cooperative continued stronger than before. And on a clear autumn day, Caleb and Eliza stood in front of their new barn built by the community, stronger than the old one, a symbol of what they'd survived and overcome. You know what I realized, Eliza said. What? When I was 18, I thought freedom meant having no obligations, no ties, no debts. She looked at him. But real freedom isn't about being alone. It's about choosing who and what you're committed to. And what have you chosen? This, you, this land, these people, this life. She smiled. I choose all of it, every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He pulled her close. I don't deserve you. You're right. You don't. But you're stuck with me anyway. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky gold and red. Around them, the ranch thrived. Animals in the pastures, crops in the fields, the sound of neighbors helping neighbors. 6 months later, Eliza stood in the town square again. But this time, she wasn't fighting. She was speaking to a group of women, young, old, some free, some still bound to contracts like she'd been. You asked me if someone like you can ever be free, Eliza said, looking at the young girl who'd approached her. And I'll tell you the truth. Freedom isn't something someone gives you. It's something you take, you claim, you fight for. But how? The girl asked. When you have nothing. You start with dignity, with the knowledge that you're worth more than any price someone put on you. Then you find people who see that worth, and you build from there. What if there's no one? Then you be the first. You stand up, you refuse to be less than you are, and you trust that others will follow. The girl looked uncertain but hopeful. Another woman spoke up. What about the ones who try to break us, who have all the power? They only have the power we give them. The moment we stop being afraid, the moment we stand together, they lose. Eliza's voice strengthened. Victor Hale had money men connections, but he lost. You know why? Because he underestimated people who had something he'd never understand. Community, courage, and the absolute refusal to stay broken. The women nodded. Some were crying. Others stood straighter. A year after the barn burned, Caleb and Eliza hosted a gathering. Every family that had fought alongside them came. They ate, sang, shared stories. As the night wore on, people started sharing what they'd built. New crops, new partnerships, children born, futures reclaimed. Margaret raised her glass. To Caleb and Eliza Voss, who reminded us that the strongest foundations aren't built on fear, they're built on choice. Everyone drank. Later, alone in their bedroom, Caleb held Eliza close. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Everything that happened, everything you went through." She thought about it. About being sold. About the fear, the fighting, the moments she thought she'd break. "No," she said finally. "Because it led me here. To you. To this life. To knowing who I really am." "And who are you?" "I'm Eliza Voss. I'm a woman who was sold but refused to be owned, who was bound but chose freedom, who was told she was worthless and proved them all wrong." She turned to face him. "I'm someone who knows that love isn't possession, it's partnership, and that the truest freedom is choosing your own life, your own path, your own future. Even when that future is hard, especially then." He kissed her, deep and long and full of promise. "I love you," he whispered. "I know, and I love you, not because I have to, but because I choose to, every single day." Outside, the ranch slept. The land they'd fought for. The community they'd built. The future they'd claimed. And in the morning, they'd wake and choose it all again. Because that's what freedom meant. Not the absence of commitment, but the power to choose your commitments, to build a life on your own terms, to stand with the people you love and fight for what matters. Eliza had been sold at 18 to a lonely cowboy, but she hadn't stayed sold. She'd transformed that transaction into something Hale and her father could never have imagined. Partnership, equality, love. And every morning when she woke in Caleb's arms, when she walked the land they'd defended together, when she helped their neighbors build lives worth living, she knew something profound. She knew that the girl who'd been priced at $40 in grain had become priceless. Not because someone gave her value, but because she'd claimed it herself. Because she'd refused to accept anything less than dignity, respect, and choice. Because she'd learned that freedom isn't something you wait for. It's something you seize with both hands and never let go. And that was a lesson she'd spend the rest of her life teaching to anyone brave enough to listen.